Hey there, guys. Good evening to you all those that are watching and tuning in. I'm so thrilled that you guys have been able to tune in tonight to talk about mental health, and in particularly men's mental health. My name is Josh. I lead the Church on the Marsh, and I'm joined by Jason here tonight, who is going to share some of his journey with mental health. So, Jason, how you doing, buddy? You okay?
Yeah, good. Great to be here.
Oh, great.
Is that
Your
my camera?
gone off? I don't know what's happening there. Oh, there we go.
There
You're back. Yeah, great. Well, thanks for being with us tonight, mate. And it's great to hear some of your story about mental health. So if you're watching this, please go ahead and share the stream so others can join in, watch along, and comment in as well. Maybe you know of someone or know of a place where you can share it, where it might be beneficial to them as well. It's a really important discussion to have in and around this time. And please be commenting, getting along. We can see your comments. And if you've got any questions or any thoughts or feedback throughout tonight, it'd be great to have that as we watch along. So thanks for joining in. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first? So sort of kind of where you grew up, family, work, stuff like that, to kind of get the ball rolling.
Yeah, great, no problem. My name is Jason. I grew up in Cumbria in Carlisle, and I spent quite a lot of my childhood there. In terms of kind of life stages, I went on to live in the northeast later in my teens, and then in my early 20s relocated to Norfolk. I moved to Lancaster around 11 years ago, and to work, and then I ended up kind of studying here, and then met my girlfriend at the time called Christina, and we are now, I hope she'd say the same, happily married, and we have 3 children, and absolutely love living in Lancaster.
That's awesome.
For work, I work as an instructional designer and play football at the weekends.
Instructional designer. Wow, I didn't even know that was your job title, but that's really cool. That's really cool. And your kids? So you got what 3 kids now?
Yeah, 3. So Elika is my oldest. She's 9. Jasper is 4, and baby Owena is 16 weeks on Wednesday. Wow.
Great. Fantastic. So a lively and bursting family. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So why don't the reason why I've asked you to come on tonight? Well, you'll certainly know. Is with your own experiences with mental health. So why don't you give us a little bit of background about that? What is your general experience with that? And we'll start from there.
Yeah. So kind of a bit of a preamble in terms of kind of mental health is just like physical health, and you can kind of have good or kind of or bad mental health really, and periods of ill health. And my experience, I've got kind of a history of mental health kind of issues, problems, experiences, however you kind of want to kind of word it. In terms of that, it kind of includes PTSD, general anxiety, and then clinical depression. And it kind of started when I was a youngster, so probably around about Elika's age. Was bullied quite a lot in school, and then kind of slowly started to kind of self-isolate really. And this is pre-COVID times as well, so it was, and took myself away from kind of social situations. And I guess it started to present itself in terms of avoiding school, making too many friends, relationships, social situations. And then as I got into my later kind of mid-teens, kind of later teens, it started into kind of progress into kind of what you class as more, I've seen perhaps more, it was more kind of depression really, in terms of lacking interest in activities, problems with my sleeping, drinking, taking drugs, suicidal thoughts, relationship difficulties often that kind of are carried into my early 20s, late teens, early 20s. And then it was really only kind of 12, 13 years ago where I started to get some kind of medical help, or perhaps more focused medical help in terms of my mental health, that kind of made me or helped me recognize some of the kind of issues and health problems I was dealing with. And in terms of kind of experience, it's kind of it's an ongoing thing. Depression can be something that can be kind of treated, and you can kind of you can try and maintain, but it's something that you generally, not always, but you generally kind of live with for the long term. So it has all sorts of impacts on my life in terms of kind of fatigue, memory problems, concentration difficulties, all sorts of problems really. And my experience is different in many ways day to day.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so it's definitely quite a long time that you've been dealing with it. So from like kind of early teens, you said. That is a long time. Wow. And as someone who doesn't suffer with mental health or depression, I can imagine how much of a struggle that's been over the time. So obviously, yeah, you've had it for quite a long time then. So how has kind of COVID affected it then? So obviously we've had this whole pandemic, it's kind of thrown everything into kind of chaos, and with lockdown, has that kind of affected your mental health in any particular way?
Yeah, it's impacted it both positively and negatively. So and it's kind of a relatively tough question to answer. So lockdown has been beneficial in a way that it's kind of made me and forced me to deal with some of the things that I have been otherwise been able to push to one side. So pre-lockdown, when you're kind of going out to work, you're playing football, and you kind of get involved in all of these different activities, you can kind of switch off outside the home, and then you can actually switch off when you come inside the home too.
Yeah.
So perhaps the way that I might deal with or relate to my children or my wife, I could kind of almost have excuses for, in terms of if I was tired or had a bit of a short fuse, or was generally just kind of a little bit disconnected. And lockdown has been really incredible for us as a family. It's the most time we've been able to spend together in I don't know how long. And it's kind of meant that actually those kind of behaviors wouldn't kind of, they're not tolerated anyway, but they wouldn't be tolerated at all. So it's kind of made me personally really think about the way that I'm interacting with my children and my wife that little bit more. Mm-hmm. In terms of kind of the negative things, it's kind of severely impacted my other support mechanisms. So, my ability just to go for a walk more than once a day, without feeling like I'm looking over my shoulder, or to call up a friend and sit in a coffee shop just to kind of offload, to play football, just to meet friends, to chat, and the more traditional kind of routine elements of day-to-day life. And for kind of people perhaps suffering with mental health difficulties, a regular kind of routine, or even without actually a regular routine, helps form that kind of stability. So that's kind of had a negative impact in terms of coming here or there, and then it has brought out the kind of some of the other things that I've perhaps been able to manage in the past in terms of unhealthy eating habits, because I work from my kitchen, so at the moment I'm sat at my desk and my fridge is just there, so I'm getting my 10,000 steps in, but the problem is it's between my desk and my fridge. And perhaps some of the detachment side of things outside of the home, it's exacerbated my that's probably increased really my detachment from the outside world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And if you're watching in the comments, or watching online, let me know how how you have felt during lockdown as well. Maybe it's affected your mental health, or maybe of other people who have been struggling with their mental health during this time, and how has it had an impact on them, and be part of the discussion here. Great. Okay. So I guess the reason why we kind of wanted to do this really is just to kind of talk about this issue more. One thing I forgot to mention at the start when we opened is that today kind of in the calendar. People often mark it as Blue Monday. Some people say it's the most depressing day of the year. I'm not sure that's relatively true. I think, mental health is a year-long thing. It's not just like a spike, a one day of the year, and we definitely shouldn't like commercialize it as such. But I guess really just kind of created an opportunity for us to be talking about this, and particularly men's mental health. It's something that's been on my mind a lot lately, and I think it's been something that's been talking a lot more about lately. So when it comes to your own depression and mental health, Jason, how do you feel about talking about it? How do you feel about being open about it? Do you feel like there's a bit of a stigma still attached to it, or do you think that's kind of starting to kind of slowly kind of fade away? Because I felt like when I was kind of growing up, as a teenager, I'd kind of know of people or hear of people that had mental health issues or depression, and and I might have thought of them as like, oh, they're a little bit weird, because I was just like the culture, or that was just the scenario that I kind of grew up in. And then now it seems to be like a whole different perception about it. So how do you feel about talking about it and how society as a whole is dealing with it? Sorry, that was a long question.
No, that's absolutely fine. When I was growing up, it was black hair, black jeans, black top, and a white face. So it was you were deemed depressive if you just dressed like that.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I generally feel okay talking about it, and it's something certainly as I've got older. And I'm 33 now. When I was 21, I couldn't imagine myself having this video conversation with you. And obviously my wanting to, or ability to really talk about it now is why I'm here today. I mean, I can talk about it in quite a broad sense, like we are now. Naturally, when I'm talking perhaps a bit more in depth or about specific things, I'm a little bit more selective in who I'm talking to, because I prefer to have that conversation on a one-to-one basis. But I think it's much more mental health now, depression and anxiety in particular, is much more at the forefront of everyday language.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And you don't really have to look too hard to find whether it be a charity or a work organization or someone having kind of a campaign to support good mental health. And I think that's such a step forward in terms of recognizing that it is a bit like physical health, in terms of it's something that we need to maintain. I mean, just thinking about the kind of the chat we were going to have today, like the depression, anxiety. I hope you don't mind me reading some stats.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah,
is the leading, or in 2014, I was struggling to find more up-to-date ones. The leading cause of disability globally. In 2016, it was the leading in the UK. It has visual signs that we don't often think about in terms of kind of some hippocampal, smaller hippocampal, and some smaller frontal lobes, and a kind of on a micro scale has all sorts of things involved with the kind of transmissions or the abnormal transmission or depletion of certain neurotransmitters. But unlike physical health, it's not something that we see visibly just to you and I. As I walk past you in the street, I'd see a broken leg.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't necessarily see the signs of depression.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's still part of the difficulty with getting it into conversation is some of the symptoms, or most of the symptoms around mental health and anxiety and depression in particular, they're kind of intangible.
Yeah.
We can't pick them up and think, okay, and identify it. And I think the more and more we talk about it openly,
Mm-hmm.
It requires us to be vulnerable and recognize that, and not everyone is comfortable with that. But the more we talk about it kind of openly, the better and deeper conversations and more meaningful conversations that we can have. But when I say talk about it, I do mean it in a meaningful way. And if I kind of just explain that, when we talk about mental health and depression, and I'm talking about from my own experience here, not as a not in any way as an expert, but it's great that depression has come into everyday language, but I just think we need to be a little bit careful in how we use it and when we're talking about it, because depression's, much more than, you can be depressed without having depression.
Yeah.
So depression is kind of more than just kind of a little bit of feeling of sadness or anxiety or self-pity or stress or something when you're unable to cope or in a stressful situation, whether it be a loss of a job or a loved one or in a bit of a financial crisis. Depression isn't kind of an illness that kind of impacts, not just your mood, but the way you see yourself and the way you relate to others and situations around you. And when we use it in a more kind of educated way in discussion and in conversations, I can see, I think one of the comments here is saying about, educating ourselves in school about it as well. And I think that's exactly it. I think if we can use the terminology in the right way and have more of those open discussions, we can start to move the stigma even more. I think the stigma has moved, like you say, quite far from where it was perhaps 15, 20 years ago. But I think the stigma has moved more to perhaps a bit of misunderstanding about the kind of causes, symptoms and impact of depression and kind of poor mental health, really. But I definitely think we're moving in the right direction. The very fact that you and I are online here talking about it today shows that there is less of a stigma. Either that or we absolutely have bulletproof skin and don't care what people think. And I know that's not the case for me.
Yeah, I think it's the prior, not the latter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Tim's just put a comment here. I think it's changed massively in recent years in terms of it being a topic that's discussed more and more in public. But I guess it'll still take a long time for us to get over some of the hang-ups and stigmas about it. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, certainly. And I guess also kind of wanted to kind of focus on tonight about kind of men's mental health, really. So how do you kind of feel about it and process it kind of as a guy and as your role as like a husband, as a dad in the home? What kind of impact or bearing does it have on that? Because I guess kind of speaking from my own experience, I feel like one of my temptations as a husband or as a father is to be quite passive in the home, in that if I'm having a bad day or I'm by no means like that. I've just kind of heard what you said. I don't want to say that, me just having a bad day equals depression. Absolutely not. But even me just having like a bad day or just a bit stressed, I kind of feel like I need to kind of just, I might be a little bit more distant with my kids and my wife, Claire, a little bit more, I might be more passive with them, just kind of want my own space a little bit. And the way that I would imagine that a more serious mental health situation would work out is that kind of exacerbated? Is that kind of being made even worse in that, and kind of, so how is the family atmosphere around that, and how do you battle against that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. So it impacts all areas of your life. Spend outside of work, and the people you spend the most time with are your family. In terms of like bringing its own challenges, I still have mornings where I wake up and I don't want to see out the day. I don't always know why I feel that way. Often I don't. And kind of trying to kind of, when you wake up in the morning, whether it be 8 o'clock, because actually I've got kids, it's never 8 o'clock. When it's 5 o'clock and Jasper's jumping on you and you're trying to kind of comprehend these emotions, whilst acknowledging my responsibilities both as a father and a husband, it's difficult, and I think one of the challenges I find particularly hard is that I've got a beautiful and caring wife, and I've got 3 amazing children, and I'm truly blessed with that. And when I'm not so well, and when I'm waking up and I'm having these thoughts, it's complete battle, because I absolutely recognize my blessings,
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop me feeling and thinking about the negative things and feeling the negative things that I do. And like I say, if anything, it exacerbates it, because I kind of think I have this wonderful home with a beautiful family. Why am I feeling like this? And it kind of brings in those challenges in terms of exacerbating that feeling of guilt, and kind of being a kind of bit of a burden, really, in terms of the impact that then that consequently has on my family. I mean, it changes the way that I relate to my children and wife, and I'm sure there's times when that also includes things like I'm passing my own insecurities onto them. Whether that be if I'm worrying about everything, not perhaps letting the children do things where otherwise I would be perhaps a little bit more relaxed, and kind of really kind of becoming a bit more withdrawn and kind of putting up emotional barriers. And I know that definitely more so in the past. I think I'm starting to manage it a little better, and Christina's much better at kind of recognizing signs too. Is that I would definitely withdraw, and would often make an excuses for withdrawing. So I could say that, no, I'm busy with work, or I've got this to do, and actually I just need some headspace. I'd want to be alone, and then that kind of takes away any kind of emotional, physical kind of connection and kind of intimacy, really, that I have with my wife and my children. So it's probably one of the hardest journeys actually I've been on, in terms of recognizing the impact that has on others just as much as it does on myself. Because sometimes you can't see beyond the darkness that sits in front of you, and recognizing that it's hurting those that you love the most is one of the hardest pills to swallow, but it's also one of the greatest encouragers to kind of do something about it too, or it can be. And on the flip side, it does have some positive things. And I say positive in a very, very loose way. Nothing scares me more than my children feeling and experiencing some of the things that I think every day.
Yeah.
But what it does do, it makes me kind of that little bit more in tune, I feel, or perhaps looking out for the signs in, obviously Elika's the oldest, so but with my family, so that should they experience that, or statistically, Christina and 3 children, 1 in 4, one of them will experience that within a lifetime, that I would hope that I could perhaps be a better support mechanism for them as well in the future. So it's definitely, if in a word, it's kind of drives disconnection, really. Maintaining that is probably one of the hardest daily struggles, because just being joyous and kind of getting up, work, doing breakfast, all of those kind of daily things, when you're at a point where you actually just want to crawl up into a corner, is really energy sapping.
Yeah, definitely. And on top of the distractions and the busyness and the work and the daily duties of life, I'm sure it's not easy. There's a question from Tim here. Jason, how would you explain depression to someone who's never experienced it themselves? What have you found most helpful that other people have said or done, or not said or done at times when your mental health has been low? Great question.
Yeah, really great question. It's actually, depression I find really hard to explain, because how it manifests in myself, it might manifest somewhat differently in somebody else. But I think Mental Health First Aid, the charity, would just probably describe it as a prolonged period of low mood, sadness, overwhelming anxiety, that persists over, I think it has to persist for more than 2 weeks. So I kind of see in terms of, if you think about depression, if you had like a depression in a road or in a surface, it would go like this. Now, if when you're at a dipping point, circumstances change, so you lose your job, or you crash your car, or you lose a family member, or you've had an argument, or even things like as little as raining outside, cause you to feel these kind of negative emotions. If after a short period of time and that circumstance has passed, your mood is lifted, you can relate your kind of perhaps your feelings and experiences to that circumstance. That doesn't make it any easier, but it allows you to kind of tie those in.
Yeah.
When you start to have perhaps, if it was prolonged past the period where X had passed or had fixed, or it's very hard because it depends on the circumstances, then I would say that's probably more like depression, and you probably want to seek help. But because it manifests itself in so many ways, so there's some days where I will not feel perfectly fine. I won't necessarily feel low. I'll just feel dull, and my memory goes out the window. And I've got 2 projects to work on at work, which is really hard because I can only concentrate on something for about 30 seconds at a time. But for someone else, it might be kind of overwhelming sadness and constant crying. So it can manifest itself in different ways. And I guess a prolonged period of overwhelming negative emotions would be the shortest way I might explain it. And in terms of what I found kind of most helpful in terms of what people have said, or Tim, I'm just reading your comment, or what they've done, especially at the moment, and I was going to mention this later anyway, is just reach out. I don't think you can underestimate the kind of power of an instant messenger on Facebook or WhatsApp, or a text message, or a quick telephone call, perhaps if you haven't heard from someone in a little while, and listen. Just sometimes, as now, me talking and being able to talk openly about it is a therapy for me, really, and just being able to talk openly and not be at the risk of judgment.
Yeah.
Is probably what I'd say is most helpful for me.
Definitely. Great.
I hope that answers your question, Tim. I hope that answers Tim's question.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, if it doesn't, I'm sure he'll ask another question.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. Great. And so, obviously, you're a Christian. Just for context, you're involved in Church on the Marsh and Hope Church as well. That's kind of where we know each other from, and how we become friends. So how is your faith in God kind of supported you or given you hope during your times of depression or during your journey with it? What impact has that had on it?
I was going to be really blunt and just say, well, since becoming a Christian, I haven't tried to take my own life, but I will expand on that. And I laugh out of nerves rather than it's a funny subject, but it's really hard to explain in terms of being able to just put in a perfect paragraph or sentence about how my faith has helped me. So I'll just try and explain it in a couple of ways. In terms of when I'm low, even when I'm kind of being in some hang on a minute.
We can still hear you. Maybe it's just your video.
Yeah, it's realised I've got a face for radio, you see. Let's just.
If not, that'll be totally fine as well. So again, if you're watching, please send in your any kind of comments or questions or thoughts or reflections as well. It'll be great to know your thoughts and reflections. And just as a way of time, we'll probably be looking to go on for another maybe 10 or 15 minutes or so. So we don't want to be taking up the whole evening, but give an adequate amount of time to be talking through these things. But again, if we can't get your camera working, that's fine. We can just do audio, and okay. People will have to settle with my with my face only.
I think, to be honest, I think they probably prefer it, so that's fine.
That's all right.
So yeah, it's hard to explain. So like in a really short way, but kind of in a I guess in a simple way. Just when I'm in really dark places, or even prolonged periods, it provides hope, and even the tiniest little bit of light in a dark place is something that I can hold on to. So an example of that is if I am in a bad place and I'm telling myself lots of negative things, kind of relentlessly pursuing something else to kind of batter myself with. Scriptures provide a tool of kind of truth and alternative messages, and it's kind of a weapon that I can use to counter those negative thoughts that the enemy is trying to tell me. Yep. So like listening to worship music, even when I'm feeling down, just having it on in the background, or even blasting it through my headphones as I walk to the supermarket just to buy essentials, obviously. Just provides me with those kind of everyday ability just to kind of reach out and connect with God.
Yeah.
Even when I'm feeling that I kind of shouldn't be here, it kind of reminds me that I'm exactly where I am, where He wants me to be, and I can kind of cry out to Him. I have that kind of direct line, kind of that instant message myself. So the Creator, my problems might be big or might feel extraordinarily big to me, but He's bigger.
Mm.
So like I found it easier as I've gone on in my kind of Christian walk. So when I became a Christian, I struggled because with an overwhelming kind of sense of guilt of kind of my past. As told and reading that I'm a sinner, which I thought at the time, I thought that's great because I know I am, and I just used it as another stick to beat myself with. Mm-hmm. But what I was missing out is that I'm a sinner, but and I have kind of this real capacity for kind of sadness, evil, badness inside me. But I was missing out the hope element, so I am a sinner, but Jesus died for me, so I didn't have to be held back by my past.
Yeah.
I have the future, and that price of kind of redemption of my past mistakes, my future mistakes, all that kind of negativity that's sat around me, that price has already been paid. So it provides that kind of continuous and ultimate message of hope, which is if you're depressed and you're even if you're a Christian, it can sometimes be hard to comprehend as kind of some abstract thought that you can be sat feeling like you don't want to end the day, but Jesus is still there with you.
Yeah.
But the fact that Jesus is still there with you gives you an end to that day.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the thing that's always reminded me about it, and whenever we see any kind of that physical suffering as well as mental, and just other types of suffering and brokenness around us, it reminds me of that, the brokenness of the world, and the hope and the truth and the gospel that ultimately we believe in a God who's going to restore the brokenness. He's going to restore the brokenness of our own bodies, of our own mind, and all of this brokenness is ultimately a signpost to something being fixed and something needing to be restored. So great. Jason's just dropped off there, but we're going to add him in again. There we go. Hopefully we can see you. Oh. Hopefully he'll be joining back in a second, probably just getting his device connected again, which is totally fine. So again, let me know if what kind of comments, thoughts, reflections that you've got as well. James just said, being united with brothers and sisters in Christ, and I'm sure that's a real encouragement, to be continually helped by and supported by other people. Great, he's back. Fantastic. Great. So last kind of two questions there, and I think we'll kind of round it off soon. So I think you kind of answered this really before with Tim's question, but the best way to respond and support people struggling with depression. So I guess, like you said before, just kind of connecting in, saying hi, just kind of walking with them. I guess is I guess that's what you kind of said before.
Yeah. I think the best way that we can, like, the support mechanisms, whether it be kind of individuals, families, friends, community members, the best way I think we can just support is by being real with each other.
Yeah.
It's kind of being aware of what's happening and of those around us. Of those that, especially more so at the moment, those that aren't around us, and just looking out for possible signs. And that doesn't kind of mean jumping at every kind of possible signs, but it's just been really kind of noting them, I guess. And it's being ready for asking someone. And there's countless times where I say to somebody, "Hey, you okay?" And I'm not actually prepared for that other person to say, "Actually, do you know what? I'm not." All I want is a nod of the head and a "thanks, see you later." So it's kind of being prepared for that kind of grittiness, I guess. And like you say, picking up the phone, texting, calling, just generally touching base.
Yeah.
One thing I'd definitely say to avoid, and I think knowing what to avoid is just as important, kind of knowing or kind of having an idea of what to do, is kind of don't try to be the doctor or try and fix someone. They're not broke. Just listen. Don't judge. If you try and in a gentle way, if you feel like you can, try and encourage them to speak to a doctor, a professional, somebody who's trained to offer some kind of guidance and kind of more official kind of support. And if you have, we've all experienced kind of feelings of depression, but try to avoid kind of trying to over-relate.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling down and low and sad, I've no doubt whatsoever that someone I'm talking to has felt that way too. But it doesn't. It doesn't always marry up, and sometimes the best thing we can do, like I say, is just listen.
Yeah.
Like in three words, I'd just pick love, patience, and Jesus. And they're all equally important.
No, that's great. That's great. Thanks, Jason. And I guess final question then is because I do know of other people and particularly other guys who are kind of struggling with mental health, but and maybe just finding it very difficult to talk about it, very difficult to kind of be open about it, even like we say, when it's quite an open discussion now, when kind of culture's kind of changing on it, and it's far more accepted, and people are much more kind of like willing to embrace it and to talk about it, but yeah, even with that, people still feel can still feel quite locked up to discuss it. So what would you say, Jason, to anybody who is watching this now or can be watching it back later on, who might be struggling with depression or anxiety or other forms of mental health, who maybe just is finding it hard to talk about it? What would you say to them, or how would you encourage them?
Physically, I'd say that the most important thing that they could do is try and find that one person, or whether it be a friend or a relative, or a charity or an organization, but find someone that they can talk to and open up. Sometimes I know, certainly in my experience, that my kind of initial stumbling block was if I start talking about it and make it real. Well, it's already real because it's already impacting areas of my life. So if I start talking about it, I can start to either discount the reality of it, or I can start to deal with it. And don't be scared to kind of actually step out. And we hear often, and I think particularly for guys, we hear often like statistics about mental health, about depression, and I think those are designed to kind of encourage us to open up a little bit more. If you're in a room with 40 people, 10 of those have probably suffered with poor mental health.
Mm.
But that doesn't make that one person's individual journey any easier in terms of opening up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think on statistics, it can take on average 10 years for someone to actually seek help.
Mm-hmm.
So open up as early as you can. And I can say that, and it's much easier for me to say than for somebody here listening to do. So if you can find somebody that can help you along the way, whether that be opening up just a little bit, or perhaps saying to someone, could you help me organize a doctor's appointment so they can be the one that picks up the phone and makes that, because that can be a big step.
Yeah.
Or having a look online too. So, there's some really great charities that have online tools that can start to help and just start to kind of make little baby steps. Because the sooner I think it can be opened up and brought to your attention and you can get support, the much less of an impact and less of a negative impact it can have on your life. Spiritually, it sounds kind of, you might want to think it sounds a little bit soft and things, but I'd say to anyone who's feeling that kind of way, that they're loved, like God loves you. Our lives in path can seem like so many different mazes coming together, but even at my worst point, I absolutely believe that God wanted me to be there. Don't always know why, but absolutely believe that God wanted me to be there. And the best thing about it, I believe that God was there with me. I know that God was there with me.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Thanks, Jason. That's awesome. I think we'll probably leave it there, unless you have any kind of final closing things to say, and then it'd be good to pray, and then finish off there. And again, if you're watching, if you want to fire in any kind of final comments or questions, then do so now. But otherwise, I think we've had a good discussion tonight, and thank you so much for sharing, Jason. So unless you have any kind of final more things to say, then I think it'd be good to pray, and then we'll finish there.
No, thanks for letting me talk about it, and I hope somewhere down the line it helps someone else talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I'll quickly pray for you and any others, and then we'll finish it out there. So yeah, dear Lord, just thank you for tonight. God, I thank you for Jason. I thank you for his boldness and his willingness and his humility to share about his life, to share about his mental health and his journey with depression. And I just pray, Lord, that by your Holy Spirit, God, that you'd constantly encourage him and comfort him during those times, God. And for anyone else, God, struggling with mental health, with anxiety, with depression, Lord, I pray, Lord, that they might seek and find hope in you and find comfort in you, and know, Lord, that they are loved by you. And even in the darkest of those moments, even on the bluest of those days, Lord, that you might be a light in their world, Lord. So I just pray, just help us to talk about it, and ultimately, God, we just know that this is a sign of the brokenness of our world and the brokenness of humanity, God, and we just look forward, God, to a day when you are going to fix that brokenness for all. So we place our hope in you. So thank you, Lord. Amen. Amen. Great. Thanks, Jason, so much for sharing tonight. Thanks everyone watching tonight. Chris has said thank you. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your openness. Jason, thanks for being so willing to share, Jason. Really appreciate it. So thanks for your comments and everyone watching tonight. And we will leave it there. So hopefully we'll be doing more of these kind of interviews over the next kind of few months on different topics, but you'll hear more about them. So stay tuned to my Facebook page and website, and we'll see you later. So bye-bye. That is all for now, guys. I just wanted to say thank you for watching and participating in the comments. Make sure to check out our Facebook page for all of the updates that are going on in the life of Church on the Marsh. And hey, why not also take a look at our website, churchonthemarsh.co.uk, where you can find a little bit more about us. Why not drop us a message too? We would love to connect with you and to find out more about you as well. So take care and God bless.